Right, we're getting to the last topic for the technology and cognition, HL extension, and here we're going to look at research methods. So if we go over to our textbook, we get into page 427. Where are we up to now? Maybe even up to here we are, page 428. Right, so these are the true experiments that we've used so far in the course. So like all research methods questions, we're looking at how and why true experiments are used. Right, for this particular lesson. So we're going to look at how and why true experiments are used to study this topic. And then, so just two lessons here, just two research methods, true experiments and correlational studies. Like all my units, these are the only two research methods I prepare students for the exams. So for every topic in the course, these are the two research methods they can write about. I've kept it simple. Just because there's so many possible research methods questions, I only want to come back to these two. And I think they're the two really important ones for students to know about. All right, so we go for a little bit of a review, and then we get straight into the lesson here. So let's have a look at the PowerPoint. Let's have a look at our lesson plan for this. Now, when we get to the research methods stuff, it's not a lot of new learning. It's really just consolidating and going back to the studies we've looked at and really thinking about them just from a different perspective. Right, that's that key question, how and why. A good Jeopardy here, linked for kids to play. I like to get them to play this in 2s and 3s. I don't host the game in front of the whole class because they don't get through enough questions and it's too passive. But if you put them in one laptop, groups of 2 or 3, I like to ability group as well, so one kid's not embarrassed by how much they struggle, and they're playing against kids with similar abilities. Yeah, that's how I run the Jeopardy. Alright, this is a great video, and I'm trying to remember, I apologize, I've forgotten. I think somewhere I suggested that this could be a good video for one of the experiment replications, and I forget where I suggested that, my apologies, but I think this is, the first 11 minutes of this video is really good. It's 20 minutes long, but it's fantastic, and it's all about technology in the brain. And that's one thing I did add to the revision textbook, was just 1 or 2 studies that might explain why technology can influence our cognitive processing. It's because it can influence the brain. And so, for example, looking at how video games might influence our hippocampus, and looking at how TV might influence our prefrontal cortex. All right, I think this is a really good video. Now, when they talk about Facebook and grades, what method do you think they use? So when you'll see, I'm pretty sure it might be correlational, but I just want students to think about that particular research method, just to link it into today's lesson. All right, our review quiz. This is in the workbook. All right, so can they say at least 3 characteristics, or can they say 3 characteristics of a true experiment? They need to know at least 2 for paper 3, because there's high-level students that we're revising for. Now, in the activities file, I have a quiz. I think how many questions did I do? Maybe 10 or 15. And I like to give them buzzers. I have buzzers that make animal sounds, and they're in pairs, and I just say the question, and then they buzz, and then the first team to get it right. This is just a good review activity. So check out the activities for that. Now, what you might be able to do, just to get them to review and to revise, is give them 5 minutes before we do the quiz, just to have a look at their flashcards and give each other tests using the flashcards in pairs. Kind of, this is a good reminder to students as well, that you're not going to have enough time in class to repeat and review and go over all the stuff we learn if you want to do well in the exams. You have to be doing it in your own time. I personally never set homework. I shouldn't say never. 99% of my classes, I don't set homework, and it's really on to the students. If you want to do well, you've got to put that work in at home. I don't set homework because I don't know what they've got going on that evening. I don't know what they've got going on that week. I don't know what they've got going on at home. I can't control that. Neither can they, and so I don't want to put unnecessary burden. I've got enough time in the course for them to, for us to review and get stuff done. So I don't need to set homework. All right. Now, so find all the true experiments. Now, I would get them to do this without looking at the textbook, because the textbook gives them the answer, and then this comes straight from their workbook. Put just the name of the researcher here, identify the IV, and identify the DV. Now, what all these have in common, there's a space in the workbook to answer that question. Hopefully what they'll find is that the IV is always the technology and the DV is always the cognition. Why? Simple answer, because that's what we're studying, right? The effects of technology on cognition. And so when they have to explain in an essay how true experiments are used, in their central argument, they'll be saying, well, the independent variable is a manipulation of some kind of technology because we want to see if that is going to have an influence on some type of cognition. And the cognition in these studies, in these experiments, is the dependent variable is some form of cognition. And what we'll do in a true experiment is control all the extraneous variables so we can deduce cause and effect relationships, for example, and then they get into the study. Most students miss out the how and why in research methods questions, so they miss out on scoring top marks. Right, and then so I use this because then I project this on the whiteboard and I can just write on whiteboard marker in the spaces provided here. Or I can get students to come up one at a time and write on the whiteboard. They like that. All right. Okay. So then a bit of chalk and talk, right? Reviewing what a true experiment does and how and why they're used. Now, this could be an additional thing. A lot of these studies are quite accessible for students in terms of how easy they are to read, and they're also available online. They can choose one of the studies that the true experiments that they liked, that they found quite interesting. So, for example, Lillard and Peterson, the TV one, the pen is mightier than the sword, which is Muir and Oppenheimer, or Sparrow's effects, Google on memory. All those are available online, and work in pairs of threes and see if they can find these study, and then find at least one way they control for a specific confounding variable, right, an extraneous variable, because that is the key part of a experiment, a true experiment, and that's just getting them to engage in those original studies. I very rarely, if ever, get my students to read the original articles, so I like that this is a chance to do that. This might even be a task that you set them for a few days, if you want to set them like a homework task that they've got a few days to complete. All right, here's our guiding question. And then evaluation. Can they think of any limitations in using true experiments? I would say one of the key limitations is that all of these true experiments typically look at the short-term effects. And so that's where we're going to get into the benefit of using correlational studies. Now, exit ticket definition, one sentence. Can they define a true experiment? Now, it seems weird, and we really have to, I think, hammer home these definitions, because these are the building blocks of knowledge in psychology, and I often make the mistake of just skimming over it and assuming that they know what a true experiment is, when really I would find that if I asked my grade 12s right now, I would say probably half of them would not write a precise definition of a true experiment, and I need to work on getting that up before exam time. All right, next lesson is correlational studies, the last lesson, or second to last lesson in this unit, if we include the review.